Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we're going to be reviewing The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. But before that, we're going to talk about Dolemite Is My Name and the Criterion Collection announcements for January 2020. Also, HBO's Watchmen, Episode 2, in a very small spoiler section, which should be timestamped in the show notes. Join us!
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always, trying to grow out that mustache is Mike. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I think the trick is to grow out all the facial hair and then trim to just the mustache instead of trying to grow out just the mustache.
Smart. That's a good tip.
Mm-hmm.
Also with me is a man who is still weeping over the local sports ball team losing. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Is that a part of Colonel Blimp that I missed, or is that a reference to the Astros?
That is a reference to current events, sir.
All right. Well then, yeah, I am very sad. It was not that fun.
No. It was fun until it wasn't, and that's the way sports ball goes.
Yeah, there were times when it wasn't fun before that, but I get your main meaning.
Yeah.
Yawn.
But it's okay. It's okay. We have movies to fill in the sad gaps that sports sometimes leaves.
Exactly.
All right. I'm stepping in. This conversation can serve no purpose any longer. If this is your first time listening to the show, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is, you guessed it, a Criterion Collection focused episode that we do every other week, where we review a film from the Criterion Collection that is voted on by the listeners. Before we get to the main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March, where we talk recent news and things we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can still listen up to that point, and then we will go ahead and give you a heads up when we move into our review for The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, spine number 173. Guys, in honor of The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, I had a question for you.
Okay. I have an answer in honor of The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
What is your favorite example you can think of off the top of your head of a movie aging a particular actor multiple decades?
Favorite movie, you said?
Yeah, your favorite, no, not favorite movie. Favorite example of aging makeup working well, looking good to you.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm still figuring mine out. I want to say The Irishman, but I haven't seen it yet. So, Justin, you go real quick.
That's not even makeup. That's a whole different. Well, maybe it counts. I don't know.
How much does Curious Case of Benjamin Button count? Because a lot of that's kind of CG.
Yeah, probably about as much as The Irishman.
Okay, so we got to go
so maybe fully. I don't know, listeners. What do you think? Would you count that? I say makeup. Okay. Like any example of any movie prior to the de-aging.
Okay. Well, then I got to go with Robert De Niro and Raging Bull.
Oh, good one. Yeah. Appropriate that you bring that one up also, because that actually has a reference to this movie. Remind me later.
Done.
Okay, Chris, did you have adequate time?
Back to the Future 2.
That's such a good choice. That's amazing.
Yeah. Good call.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Well, the one that came to mind off the top of my head was James Dean in Giant.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure if the shots that I'm thinking of are even actually James Dean.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Because he died before it was finished.
That's fair.
And I'm not sure exactly where is him and where is not him, Because it may be that he did such a convincing job of looking way older, but it also could be because he's a different person altogether.
I guess you could also go Orson Welles, Citizen Kane.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, that's
a good one. Okay, I'll steal that one real quick. Orson Welles, Citizen Kane.
Perfect.
Good choice.
Thank you.
Mike,
I thought of it just now.
Or 2001, Space Odyssey, towards the end. That's another
pretty good.
Okay.
All right.
Before we just get into listing off examples.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Oh, and that's to me, actually.
That's you.
So, all right, so you can send us your favorite examples of people being aged by makeup in film over multiple decades. And you can also vote to pick our next Casually Criterion episode on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. And the voting is actually mostly on Twitter, but we post links to the Twitter poll on Facebook and not really on Instagram because you can't post links on Instagram, but that's irrelevant.
That's right.
And if you want to send us any questions about the films we're reviewing each week, you can send us questions to those social media accounts. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so and you enjoy the show and you want to help other people find the show, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Let us know that what you like about the show, what you don't like. Just do it as a 5-star review, and that'll help us out a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, we haven't actually told anybody this, at least not on the show, but we have a YouTube channel that you guys can go to. So if you're at work or something and you want to listen to it, you can listen to it on YouTube as well. So that's also a good spot for you to go listen to it.
True. But who listens to YouTube?
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised. I've heard people talking about listening to Joe Rogan. They just put him in the background.
Oh,
but everybody listens. Yeah. So
yeah, that shut me up.
Take that, Justin.
All right, and real quick, guys, are we ready to go ahead and move into news on the march?
Please.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, real quick though, before we go, I wanted to be sure and remind you, stay tuned after our review of The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, where we will pick the next options to vote on the next Casually Criterion.
News on the march!
All right, Justin. Old buddy, old pal. I believe since last time we recorded, there have been some new announcements from the Criterion Collection.
Very true. Yeah, they released their monthly list of the films that are coming out. This time it was for January 2020, and they're releasing 5 films. And just real quickly, I'm going to read them all off. January 7th, we have Holiday from George Cukor. January 14th, we have The Fugitive Kind from Sidney Lumet. January 21st, Le Petit Soldat from Jean-Luc Godard. And then on January 28th, we have 2 films, Failsafe from Sidney Lumet and All About My Mother by Pedro Almodovar. And I have seen a lot of these films, actually, for a change.
I've seen 3 of them.
I have seen 4, all but 1. I have not seen Failsafe by Sidney Lumet, but I've seen Holiday, Fugitive Kind, Le Petit Soldat, and All About My Mother.
Yeah, I have not seen Failsafe. I might have seen All About My Mother, but I honestly do not remember, so I'm going to say no. But it sounds really, really familiar.
I actually got to see All About My Mother in the theater, and there's this really small theater that would play all these, they played All About My Mother, the Pedro Almodovar film, and then they played, what was the name of the movement, the film movement that...
The Dogma 95?
Yeah, Dogma 95. They played a bunch of his films, and then...
That's not a person.
Oh, it's not a person.
What did I say?
It's a movement.
Well, not his film, but...
Are you talking about Lars von Trier?
No, there was a movement that they played films from the Dogma 95, which is cool. And that's how I first discovered those movies. And then Croupier, they played there too. Anyways, there's this really great theater. I miss it.
Yeah, it sounds good. So I'm really excited because I think maybe like a week, 2 weeks ago, I rearranged my criterions and put them in alphabetical order instead of spine number, which is something I do periodically. I don't know why, but I just do, just to change things up, keep life fresh. And I was looking at The Fugitive Kind because they released this a while ago, but even though I think they were in the time where they were releasing Blu-rays, for whatever reason, maybe it was a rights thing, The Fugitive Kind only came out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like finally the Blu-ray upgrade when there should have been a Blu-ray, and it's just kind of felt like, I think it's that and Stagecoach. Or maybe Stagecoach has a Blu-ray.
It does.
Okay, well, never mind. But I guess I just got, those came out around the same time. But anyways, Fugitive Kind just hasn't had a Blu-ray, and I'm like, why did this never get a Blu-ray? I wish I had it on Blu-ray and not DVD. So now I can update it.
Yeah. I remember I saw a DVD of this, and I bought it from like a Big Lots. Like when they used to sell a bunch of DVDs for like $1 or like $5 or something like that. I bought, like before Criterion had released it, I bought the DVD for The Fugitive Kind when I was going through my Sidney Lumet phase. And I think you watched that too, and then I think you were like, the sound on this DVD is terrible or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But yeah, that's the version of Fugitive Kind that I've seen. I don't think I've even watched the Criterion version that I got.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's always felt like a DVD. I'll wait for the Blu-ray.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other Sidney Lumet movie I haven't seen, but I'm really excited. I'm a big Sidney Lumet fan. Network is one of my favorite films, and has been for a long time. So anything by him, I'm pretty much on board to see.
Yeah, Failsafe is good. That's one that I've seen. It's really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Holiday, of course, is Cary Grant,
Mm-hmm.
Katharine Hepburn. So that's just a super fun one.
It is. Great movie.
And I think it just puts us one step closer to that, hopefully, eventual release of Bringing Up Baby that I keep waiting for.
Cross those fingers.
Yeah. Well, anything else on these January 2020 new releases from Criterion?
Yeah, strong month.
Yeah. I wish they were available now because the Criterion sale is actually going on. It just started today, I think.
I bet there will be another one.
The 50% Barnes & Noble.
I never have any money when these sales arrive.
Or when they're not here, I don't have money either.
Well, let's move on then so you don't have to be sad for too long.
Thank you.
So, Mike, what do you have?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff has been going on this week. I just recently watched the first Terminator with my girlfriend, catching up on the first couple Terminators before Dark Fate comes out. Recently, I literally, just before recording, got done seeing The Lighthouse, which I'm still digesting. But what I wanted to talk about today is a movie that hit Netflix last Friday. And it's a movie that I've been hearing about for a few months now, as it's been making its way through different festivals, and word of mouth has been getting around. And this is a film called Dolemite Is My Name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and this is the triumphant return of Eddie Murphy. Well, I guess not complete return. I guess he's been doing stuff, but the return to Eddie Murphy as you remember Eddie Murphy and the way you want Eddie Murphy to be, which is like larger than life, charming, funny, sometimes dramatic, but mostly just, oozing all that charisma that we've been missing for so many years. Have either of you guys watched this movie yet?
Yeah, I watched it.
I have not.
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I'd heard of it, and it kind of snuck up on me that it was even out. I thought it was, we were still a ways away from it, and all of a sudden, here it is on Netflix. But that's kind of Netflix's
Surprise.
thing.
Yeah, that's their MO. Basically, like any movie you've heard of, we're just gonna dump it.
Surprise.
No, but anyways, I'd be interested to see what your overall thoughts on the movie are. I think the movie's pretty good. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think if you have been missing Eddie Murphy, then it's worth it just to, sit back and watch him do his thing, because he doesn't miss a beat. He's great in this movie.
Agreed.
Like, he is firing on all cylinders, and I tell you what, I didn't realize how much I really missed him. Because he's been gone for so long. He was so everywhere in like the early 2000s and late 90s. And then I guess he just got tired of it. I don't know. Pluto Nash happened and he just disappeared. But
he did a lot of mediocre stuff too.
Yeah, but every comedian does that. But
yeah,
I don't know. He's out and about. They're filming Coming to America 2 now. So I don't know. It feels like he's just back all of a sudden.
Yeah,
he couldn't resist the paychecks.
Yeah, it's hard to do. If someone offered me like a truck of money to come back, you better believe I would.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Although I doubt Dolemite Is My Name was that movie with a truckload of money. Actually, I read that Eddie Murphy just kind of wanted to pay homage to the guy that the movie is actually about.
Right.
So it was more like a passion project. But Chris, you said you saw it. What did you think of the movie and Eddie Murphy in it?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I don't think this movie's great, but it's definitely fun. I had a great time with it. I think Eddie Murphy's really great. Everybody talks about Eddie Murphy and his return, but I think the thing I walked away with this movie was Wesley Snipes and his return, because Wesley Snipes has the things I know Wesley Snipes for. is, stuff like Blade and his action movies, White Men Can't Jump and stuff like that. But Wesley Snipes in this is very different and is really, really funny in this. So I think it's Wesley Snipes' return. Everybody talks about Eddie Murphy, but Wesley Snipes is really good in this movie.
Wesley Snipes makes some really bold choices in this movie, too.
Yeah, he does.
It's like, sometimes I was like, what is he doing? But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No, I thought he was really good. I thought the choices were bold and big, and I agreed with them for the most part. I thought they were really funny.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing I like about Dolemite Is My Name that I find really interesting is the writers. These guys are the people that did, Ed Wood and the People versus Larry Flint, and they've done a lot of biopics or kind of biopics in this fashion, at least. And what I kind of find interesting is as we go through their career is watching how different directors interpret their material, because they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're doing the same thing over and over again, but they're doing biopics over and over again.
Well, this is a very formulaic movie, but it's enjoyable.
Yes. And I just enjoy seeing how Tim Burton interprets their movie and their writing, and then you get the other guys doing their stuff as well. So I also find that interesting. I like the two writers, and I like their films that they've done, like the People versus Larry Flint and Ed Wood, and I think they do a solid job on this as well.
I agree. It's not going. It may be on some best of the year lists, but I would be surprised if it was in any kind of awards talk. Maybe best actor for Eddie Murphy, but I doubt it.
There's a lot of talk about that. He's definitely pushing for it.
Well, I can see them certainly pushing for it. It's a feel-good movie. It's happy. Like I said, it takes the formulaic biopic approach, but I think it wears it with its heart on its sleeve. You know what I mean? It doesn't try to be something it's not. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It literally just kind of wants to go for a very, very watchable, semi-biographical movie,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to watch it for sure.
Let me know what you think whenever you see it. I'd be interested to see what you think about just if the comedy worked for you, or it's an interesting movie.
This is a movie that Justin will either hate with all his heart or he'll love with all his heart, I think.
Yeah. And I don't feel either of those things about it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, I'm chomping at the bit to figure out which one I'm going to fill.
Ooh. Me too. Report back, I guess. But that's about it for me. That is Dolemite Is My Name. It's on Netflix now. I say give it a watch. I don't think you'll regret it. It's an easy sit.
Cool.
Okay, so that does it for Dolemite Is My Name. I believe now we wanted to go ahead and talk about the second episode of HBO's Watchmen. We, of course, talked about the first episode a little bit in some depth on our last episode. And so we haven't really gotten a chance to get together since the second episode premiered. So we are going to be talking about Watchmen in some depth here. If you don't want to know anything about the show or any of the spoilers or anything happening, I would go ahead and look at the show notes on your app and skip ahead to our review on the life and death of Colonel Blimp.
You've been warned. So at this point, if you're still listening, you're ready to hear some Watchmen Episode 2 spoilers.
That's it. You're in the danger zone.
I guess just general thoughts. I'm curious where you guys came down on this episode, particularly in comparison to the first episode, if you liked it more or less. Chris, what did you think?
I think it's always interesting with pilots and second episodes to compare those two because, pilots usually get a lot of money thrown at them, because they're like, we got to make this big and make it great, so we hook everybody. And then a lot of times that second episode kind of reels it back in and takes its time and maybe covers some of the same ground again. I like the second episode. I'm liking the season so far and where it's going. It's really interesting to me. So yeah, I guess I like it, and we can dive further into it here in a little bit. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think, Justin.
Yeah, so this one, I guess I would say that I'm a little disappointed just because the vibe that I'm getting now is that this is going to be kind of our main characters and our main plot line through the season. I'm sure we'll have more characters, but I guess I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of an overall tapestry of a show with different heroes and stuff like that, or if you want to call them heroes, whatever they're called. And yeah, and I guess like I was just kind of hoping that I would get some more people, and maybe someone that I might like more than anybody I've liked just based on episode 1. So there's a bit of a disappointment that the world didn't really expand a whole bunch for me to bring in a lot more. That said, I think what was here was on par with the first episode for me. And, you know, I enjoyed it. I'll watch episode 3. What I will say is I am intrigued by the Jeremy Irons stuff. Like, we're getting a little bit more of a peek at what's going on with him. And that I was really interested in and trying to really think about. And I'm hoping that as I continue watching, there's more light shed on, you know, either specifically what's going on with him, like making this play and having these weird, I guess, you know, android type people, or if there's some sort of like, you know, theme and message that I'm supposed to be pulling from all this that I can't quite get yet because I haven't seen everything, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still intrigued, if not slightly disappointed because it's not quite what I was hoping for. So Mike, where are you at?
Very close to you, Justin. Like Chris, I'm pretty much hooked on the show. I'll watch the whole season at this point, no matter what. But I, like you, am a little disappointed that this does seem to be our main character, and we don't have main characters yet. Mm-hmm. The Watchmen novel, or the comic, it had a lot of characters, and it felt big. It felt sprawling. It felt like a whole world we were being thrown into and get to explore. The TV show feels much smaller in comparison of a story. Less ambitious, right. Less scope. I don't know where it's going yet. It's only episode 2. But yeah, it doesn't feel like Watchmen to me yet. That said, what's there is good. I'm still intrigued by what's going on. I like the character we have so far. I just wish that we had more characters or more, you know what I mean? Like, just basically what you said. Spend more time with Looking Glass. Spend more time with Red Scare. Like, the characters are there. We just don't get to spend any significant amount of time with them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the end of episode 1 kind of asks a question or catapults the Regina King's character into this stuff. And that's who we spend most of the second episode with, as she kind of, her and Louis Gossett Jr.'s character kind of go and discover these things and play their little games as, you know, Louis Gossett Jr. is asking these questions and who is Louis Gossett Jr.? So they kind of have to spend time developing that part of it. I really think that I don't want to try to guess into it, but I think we're going to get an expanded universe, and it's going to start opening up. Now, if we come back next week and it's still just been the Regina King story, which it's going to be for the whole season, but if it doesn't start expanding and talking more about like Jeremy Irons' character, or we don't see Dr. Manhattan, like, yeah, I could see a little bit of disappointment there. I like the questions that are being asked, you know, like Louis Gossett Jr.'s character, like, he's drinks hot coffee and reaches into a boiling pot to get out, you know, boiling eggs, right? So, like, what's going on there? You know, there's a lot of cool questions that are being asked, but I think the question is, can we land, you know, like, can we get the right answers, and will it feel good when we get those answers, you know? So I'm definitely excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I think the thing is all the new stuff hasn't built up to that point where I'm quite as hooked by everything as I was like by the end of the original novel, and I still kind of have like my hook into the novel still there, and like that other stuff hasn't gotten up there yet, because I do find myself, you know, already interested and find like the stuff that's Jeremy Irons is doing way more interesting, like his play that's, you know, for whatever reason he's doing this play of like the origin story of Dr. Manhattan, right? And
yeah, I guess
like those kind of tie-ins are the thing where I'm like, it's difficult because I really want that stuff. I want like it to tie back in, and this other stuff doesn't. So maybe that's the struggle right now until, you know, I've spent more time with that other story.
Yeah, you want the sequel parts of this.
Yeah, because right now Regina King's cool, and she's eventually probably going to get there. But right now, she's the least interesting character of all the new characters they've showed us because she's just the good guy.
Oh, I think we're.
Right.
I mean,
so far.
I think that there's gray to her. You know, like.
Yeah, but we don't see much of it yet. So, like right now, the other characters seem more watchable because I'm like, ooh, what are they going to do? You know what I mean? Like, Looking Glass is supposedly a cold bastard or whatever she calls him, but he doesn't seem like it. You know?
Looking Glass, actually, I mean, he seems like a Rorschach.
He seems like the most interesting part of the new show.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. Like if he comes into it more, well, it'll be interesting. Like maybe he's part of the KKK. You know, who knows?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple things real quick I wanted to touch on that questions that have been building, I guess, but maybe people don't even recognize the questions yet. The mansion that Jeremy Irons is in. Is the same shape as the mansion on Mars in the first episode that Dr. Manhattan tears down. It's also the same shape of the mansion of all the metal stuff that little boy that Regina King adopted. It's the same shape as the mansion or the model he's making in his room before he tears it down. And so somehow that shape is connected. That shape of that mansion is a reoccurring image.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, and they've talked several times about how Dr. Manhattan can't look like humans, but he can be in multiple places at once. So that leads me to believe that he can look like humans. Because they've told us, I think, a couple times that he can't. So why keep doing that unless they're going to break that rule?
Let me ask you guys this, and maybe we can do like we'll guess, or like you guys can tell me what you think is going on with Jeremy Irons' character. They haven't even named him as Ozymandias. I think we've all kind of put that together. But where is he? Like, what's he doing? You know, like, what are our guesses? You know, just our wild theories.
I don't know if I want to speculate yet, but I think he's surrounded by not robots, but clones. Because I believe there is reference to cloning animals in the original Watchmen novel. He's retreating from society because he never felt any kinship with anyone other than Alexander the Great.
Well, society thinks he's dead. Because there's newspapers and stuff that around was talking about Adrian Veidt being dead. So,
right. So I think he
thinks he's dead.
I think he's intentionally retreated from society wherever he is.
Yeah. I kind of feel like he might be in some sort of creation of Dr. Manhattan's. And I think
have very Doctor Who of this series, if that's the case.
Yeah. And I mean, because or in some sort of time loop or something, I don't know. But like he's going through that anniversary thing, you know, like they built the cake for him again, except there's 2 candles in it this time. So like, I don't know, there's some sort of loop going on. And also I think in the comic, Dr. Manhattan talked about trying to build his own life forms and stuff. So maybe that's
he
what
wanted
the
to create
clones
life.
are. Yeah. What about you, Justin? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I really haven't had enough from it to really formulate what's going on. I mean, some of it just kind of feels like it might be a little bit of catharsis for him to be doing this, but I think that's maybe just what we're supposed to be feeling. Is he creating these androids? Did he do that, you know?
I think they're clones.
As some sort of, they're clones?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying earlier. I believe they're clones because in the Watchmen novel, he references the ability to clone animals and stuff.
Right. Yeah, clones makes more sense, especially after you see, I mean, it could still be androids. I don't know, but like, you see the one burnt husk, and there's not like any metal parts or any android stuff going on.
Guess that's fair. Yeah, I guess I just immediately from like the word go was thinking androids because their mannerisms are so weird, but it makes sense for clones to be that way too, I suppose.
Yeah.
Who do you think that Louis Gossett Jr., whatever his character's name is being protected by or watched over by? Because obviously he gets like picked up in the end.
Have you heard the theory that he's actually Hooded Justice?
Yes.
No.
I have.
So, Hooded Justice is the hero that is portrayed in the American Hero Story TV show, the show within the show. Mm-hmm. The one that's like the same tone of the Zack Snyder movie.
Right.
In the original Watchmen comic, Hooded Justice was the first one to retire, and I think it's Rorschach is the one, or no, it's Night Owl. The original Night Owl, who wrote the book Under the Hood.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
he always speculated that it was a German bodybuilder that was drowned that was the real Hooded Justice. But in the American Hero story, the body they found face down in the water has the same image from the comic of the German bodybuilder, and the narration in the actual episode says something to the effect of like, I faked my death, now I can do whatever I want, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think everyone thinks that Hooded Justice was like the white guy that it's portrayed as on TV. Probably like the most common theory would be like the German bodybuilder, but it's possible that it was Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah, I think it was in the comics when the Keene Act happened. They like that you had to reveal your identities or work for the government. Mm-hmm. He just retired, and so nobody ever found out who he was. And it really goes well with the theme if it was a man, a black man, and then as time goes on, everybody imagines him as a white man.
Yeah, they kind of repurposed him as a white man, and then also it would line up with the opening in the first episode of the black sheriff. Or the
right.
Who wore the hood?
The silent film thing.
Yeah, that he would have been watching as a child right before the race riots broke out.
Yeah. And he kills the chief of police guy with a noose. He hangs him, right? Which doesn't Hooded Justice have the noose
around
keeping
his
thing on? And that just symbolically ties in with like lynchings and stuff like that. And I guess that maybe even like the German bodybuilder thing is like, wasn't he in the war in World War II? Like, wasn't he the one that got like?
That was his dad.
Oh, his dad was in the.
Oh wait, the German bodybuilder?
No, I mean like Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah, his dad had that pamphlet.
I was thinking, well, he's over like fighting, and maybe that's like where German confusion would come in or something, but that's maybe not accurate. So forget it.
Yeah, but anyway, it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, and it's a fun show. I mean, this stuff is fun. I'm excited. I'll watch episode 3 for sure, and probably the whole thing at this point.
Yeah, it's fun to at least speculate on.
Yeah,
and if you guys like this part of the show, like us talking about Watchmen, we can continue to do it. Just write in, let us know. I think I'm having a good time with it. I don't know if you guys are or not, but I hope so for sure.
Definitely. Takes me back to the days of watching Lost and talking about it at Blockbuster together.
Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up our Watchmen discussion. Am I right?
You're correct.
All right. So I guess without further ado, it is time to go ahead and move into our Casually Criterion review for The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
You tell me.
It is a different knowledge they need now, Clive. The enemy is different, so you have to be different too.
Are you mad? I know what war is.
I don't agree. I read your broadcast up to the point where you described the collapse of France. You commented on Nazi methods, foul fighting, bombing refugees, machine gunning hospitals, lifeboat, lightships, bailed out pilots, and so on, by saying that you despised them, that you would be ashamed to fight on their side, and that you'd sooner accept defeat than victory if it could only be won by those methods.
So I would.
Clive, if you let yourself be defeated by them just because you are too fair to hit back the same way they hit at you, there won't be any methods but Nazi methods. If you preach the rules of the game, while they use every foul and filthy trick against you, they laugh at you. They think you're weak, decadent.
Okay, so as usual with our Criterion films, they're usually older films that have been out for a while, so we will not be doing a spoiler-free section. So this is your spoiler warning. We are about to talk about the film, and we may spoil it at any second, starting now.
All right. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp was directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. It stars Roger Livesey, Deborah Kerr, and Anton Walbrook. The IMDb synopsis says, from the Boer War through World War II, a soldier rises through the ranks of the British military. That is a sparse synopsis, and I love it.
for a 2.5-hour movie.
I'm here
It
for
doesn't
it.
tell you anything, really.
Yeah.
That could be mini movies.
That's not even how I would describe the movie if I had to put my own one-sentence synopsis on it.
No, not at all. But I appreciate it for being vague.
Yeah.
We certainly didn't spoil anything there.
Nope. So who wants to get us started? I can if no one else wants to go first.
Mike, since you introduced me to Powell and Pressburger, I would love it if you go first.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so this was my second go-round with The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. A few years back, I watched this on Netflix, along with a few other Powell and Pressburger films. That's back before Criterion made their way to Hulu.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was a few years ago.
It was a few years ago, yeah, absolutely. When our guest last week, Chris Gallagher, recommended their films as a theme, Powell and Pressburger, I knew I was in for a treat because no matter what, they were basically going to have a good movie to watch. But I must say I was a little bit more excited when this one won because I've only seen this one once. And I've seen a few of their other movies twice. Or more. So it all worked out. And I think this film is quite good. I really feel the time passing in this movie. I think there's a certain level of nostalgia or melancholy about time and lessons learned, or in some cases not learned. And how sometimes you've outlived your time. But that doesn't always mean that you aren't to be respected. I don't know, there's a lot there, and I think this movie has a very interesting, unique point of view, especially for a movie that came out in the 40s. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it, but yeah, I was grateful for the chance to watch this movie again. I enjoyed it probably more the second time. So, Chris.
Yeah, first off, shout out to Chris Gallagher, who named his podcast War Starts at Midnight from this movie.
Yeah, about 10 minutes into this movie, not even 10 minutes, like 7 minutes, 4 minutes into this movie, I was like, oh, so that's where they got the name for their podcast.
Yeah, he actually said when he recommended this movie as one of the ones for the audience to vote on, he said that if you want to play a drinking game, take a drink every time someone actually says War Starts at Midnight.
You won't remember the rest of the movie, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They stop for a long time, though, and then at the end, they come back with a few more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gives you time to sober up.
Yeah, you get time to be like, oh, man, almost out of the woods.
But yeah, so thanks to him for recommending this great movie. Just like Mike, I knew that we were going to have a good one from these. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought, especially in the first half, it was really funny and enjoyable and fun, and then it kind of moves on into some more dramatic territory, but it never completely lets up. I like that Deborah Kerr, it's interesting that she plays 3 roles, which I did not realize until afterwards, which is shameful to admit.
You just thought there was a lot of redheads in this
movie. I was
movie.
like, well, there's a lot of redheads in this movie. I mean, because they did enough to, I can never tell those redheads apart,
Whoa.
They all look the same.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You just offended 1% of people.
Yeah.
I think.
I guess. Anyways, let's move on from that. But what movie I really thought about while I was watching this, though, was The Grand Illusion. There's a lot of similarities between this and The Grand Illusion. And it's that idea of warfare as being noble and following the rules in warfare. And it's just an interesting idea because I think we are so far removed from those ideas and ideals that it's interesting to go back and visit them and wonder if they ever actually really worked, So I found that fascinating in this movie.
I think this movie argues the point that it didn't work.
Yeah.
But we can get into that later.
Well, yeah.
That's how they lost the colonies, don't you know?
Don't you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think based on this movie, that's how the World War II even happened. It was because that method of fighting didn't work the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this film. Ready to dive in deeper, but first I want to hear Justin's thoughts.
All right, so this was my first time to see this film. Like you guys, I was pretty excited no matter what won our poll because Powell and Pressburger, to this point, everything I've seen by them has been really great. And yeah, this didn't really disappoint on that terms, but I think this movie, to me, was maybe the slowest of their 3 films that I've seen, which would be the 3 choices we had in the poll, which were the Red Shoes, Black Narcissus, and Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. I think this is maybe the slowest and maybe my least favorite, just in terms of like entertainment, but that's not to say that I didn't like it. I will say that, like their other films, this movie is incredible looking. Like, it's shot in Technicolor, and it's just beautiful to look at, from start to finish. There's a lot of really great, I assume, like matte paintings and like really wonderful looking skies throughout the film that are just like, they're not really real looking. They're kind of like surreal and a little fantastic.
Hyper real. Yeah.
Hyper real. That's a good term for it. And I really just love that about their films, that there is this hyper realism to them. So that didn't disappoint. All the performances are great. I found it like that there to be so much charm in this film, at least like early on. Like there's something so enjoyable about just like older classic like British sensibilities. Like, it's what I really love about a film like Kind Hearts and Coronets, if you guys have seen that. I'm pretty sure Mike has.
Yep.
And then like the 2 guys on the train in The Lady Vanishes that are just kind of like proper wry British people, and it's just like, it's entertaining. And I really love it, and I was just like kind of charmed the whole time by that. I did really enjoy the themes of the movie, the kind of overarching theme that you guys have touched on of, you've grown and the times have like passed you by, essentially, and the way you live, the way your values no longer exist. And I think this film, because of those themes that it carries through, feels so relevant today. And I'm sure it will always feel relevant, because there will always be people who feel like the world is changing around them from what they know and what they understand to be right and good.
No Country for Old Men.
Yes. And maybe that's one of the strongest themes in all of cinema, because we're sitting here talking about it in The Grand Illusion, and then Colonel Blimp, and probably 100 other films, all the way up to No Country for Old Men. And it just resonates really strong. And I think it speaks to this movie that they made something that feels so of its time, like visually, but on a like thematic story level, so much of it can apply right now. And you can really, like, despite me not having gone through war and, as the synopsis said, rose through the ranks of like the British military, I haven't done that, but I can completely sympathize with this character and this guy who is really probably nothing like me. And I just really connected with the movie a lot in that way. So I'm a pretty big fan of it, even if it maybe isn't the most entertaining of their films that I've seen, like on the surface.
Yeah, they set the bar pretty high with their films, I think.
Yeah.
I do like, you talked about how this was kind of a slower film, and it felt to me like I was binging a TV show to a certain extent. And I think when I go back and revisit older films, and especially ones that are more episodic, but a lot of times it's like binging a TV show that's like 3 hours long, because they go through there's these very different segments of the film, and they feel not necessarily a part, it's of a whole, but they feel different than what came before it. Like it feels very episodic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's a long way of saying that, but
yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's interesting. Apparently, when this movie first came out, the full version is 163 minutes, but the American version was cut down to 150 minutes.
Boo.
And then apparently there was a version on TV that was about 93 minutes with commercials.
Okay.
And that's the version that Martin Scorsese first saw, apparently. I watched this introduction from Martin Scorsese where he talks about this movie and why it means so much to him. And he talks about how that's the version he would have seen, which would have been the 90-minute version.
Right.
On TV. And for a long time, the original 163-minute version just didn't exist. You just couldn't see it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was actually really interesting.
Till the lovely Criterion folk came along, or whoever maybe came along before that.
Right,
put it out there. I will say, just really quickly in terms of like versions of the movie and whatnot, is that I have the Criterion channel and I have the app on my phone, right? Mm-hmm. And I was streaming it to my TV, but then my fiance went to bed, and we live in a pretty small apartment. So usually when she goes to bed and I have to watch things, I put headphones on, and I didn't have a way to put headphones on like with the Criterion app, since I was streaming it to my TV, and I didn't want to like watch it on my phone or a laptop just because it's a Powell and Pressburger Technicolor movie, right?
Right.
And so I ended up then just paying to rent the movie on Amazon Prime, and I highly advise against watching the movie on Amazon Prime, because immediately the quality in the version that's on Amazon Prime and the Criterion version is just significantly lower. Like whatever's on Amazon Prime has to be like the pre-Criterion transfer where they clean the film up, because it's like it just does not look that great.
Bummer.
Yeah. It wasn't like a streaming quality issue. It was like, it just wasn't as sharp. The transfer was bad. There was like the image like quality was like flickering in and out, and there was like, film noise. Not that that's horrible, but for this movie and for Powell and Pressburger, I want to see the film great looking,
Yeah, totally. So earlier you mentioned that this movie, or no, you didn't mention that. So earlier you answered that Raging Bull might be like your favorite aging makeup.
Yeah.
And it's funny because actually in that introduction by Martin Scorsese, he talks about how Powell and Pressburger would actually visit him while he was filming Raging Bull.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they would kind of geek out about it. And Robert De Niro, when he met them, all he wanted to talk about was the aging.
From this movie?
How do you do it? From this movie, yeah, from Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. He wanted to talk about the aging process because they thought the aging was so good. Especially for its time, it looks better than a lot of movies now when actors try to age.
Right.
And so, apparently, like they took a great interest in that, and apparently, Powell or Pressburger one was just saying like, "It's acting, my boy. It's just acting." So, yeah,
fair
it's
enough.
Somewhere on YouTube. Anyway, look it up. It's pretty interesting.
Well, the makeup, I mean, it does look good. Like when the movie switches its. Goes back in time, right? The 40 years from when we first meet. What is his name? I keep wanting to call him Colonel Blimp, but damn it, that is not his name.
Yeah, he's not a colonel, and he's
Colonel
not
Candy.
named Blimp. Candy.
Or Candy, yeah. General Candy.
I don't think he's a colonel. I think he's just a...
I'm seeing General. So General Candy.
Yeah, General Candy.
He ends as a general, yes.
Yeah. So when we first meet him, and then we go back in time, and we see the younger version of him, I was just like, different actors.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, yeah.
And then you
nope.
realize, no. Not different actors, so
it just looks awesome.
It was really great to watch him as he progresses too. Like so like he'd get a little bit closer to that end game. That mustache. He didn't quite have the mustache yet, but he was growing it in, and that was fun to watch.
Yeah, that mustache, like it's funny. I think is when you first meet him. Like I just found his character kind of like just a little like idiotic looking and just like really silly.
Yeah,
almost like this like cartoonish like strong man from like a Mike Tyson boxing video game, like those really old like Nintendo ones.
Right.
Like that's kind of what he looked like to me, and it's interesting going back and seeing him before the mustache. But then you go on the journey with him, and suddenly he doesn't look so silly, and he's not quite as goofy of a man, and you kind of understand the way that he reacts in that first scene.
Yeah, which is exactly the point, right? That's what he's saying as like they go into the pool, which he's like, you make fun of my bald head, but you don't know why I don't have hair or something like that. You make fun of my mustache, but you don't know why I grow it, kind of thing.
Yeah, which everybody has their own story. Everybody's like this unique person, and you can sit here from a distance and judge like, well, why are they like that? Why do they have this goofy haircut? Well,
yeah,
could be reasons.
And it's really smart to start the movie the way they do as well, because we do that. We judge him and we're like, what a goofy guy, because we're following our hero, at least for that first like 10 to 15 minutes, is the one guy that's like, the war doesn't start at midnight, it's going to start at 6 because that's war. And so that's our hero. And then he captures General Candy and we're like, what a dummy. That's not how war works. And then we go back and when we revisit him, not only we've taken that same path that the goofy guy has that started the war at 6 o'clock instead of midnight, and I really like that aspect of it.
I would say this movie is probably one of the most effective examples I can think of a film that, we start, at one point and then flash back and work our way all the way back to that point. I struggled to think of a film like off the top of my head, or even like since watching this one, of that is like a better example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that could have made it better though is at the beginning, right before they go into the pool, it could have freeze framed, record skip, look at the camera, and I bet you're wondering how I got here. Well,
that's true.
Let me tell you a story.
40 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, well, you've just brought it to my mind. Maybe it works really well in The Jerk too. Starting in one place, then seeing the journey of how we got there. That's a pretty good one where you really want to know the answer of how this person got to where they are.
Yeah, it's a very effective tale. So one thing that we mentioned earlier was that a lot of this movie is about, the polite way that the government and the military conducted itself up until this point needs to go, right? In order to defeat the Nazis, you have to be brutal. You have to set aside these the sportsman game-like quality that you're treating war with, and actually fight dirty, because they're not going to let you fight the old school way. You will lose. You will be eradicated. And apparently, whenever Powell and Pressburger wanted to make this movie, they did not have the cooperation of the military or the government. Winston Churchill did not want this movie to be made, and people were advising them not to make it at all because it would just not be good, because it was critical, especially in the 40s as all this was happening,
Yeah, definitely. And people don't like to be critical of the military. That still happens and exists today.
Yeah. So they weren't able to get Laurence Olivier, which they wanted, to play the lead. And they didn't have the cooperation of that's why in all the war scenes and stuff like that, you don't really see that much, no jeeps, no equipment really,
Right.
Just a couple things here and there.
It's pretty bare bones in terms of the actual military scenes. We don't have a lot of combat, a lot of that equipment and stuff, but
right.
I mean, not that the movie's about that. I think
right.
Be weird.
But anyway, Powell and Pressburger, they wanted to make this movie, and they thought this message was so important that they decided to make it anyway, without permission or the blessing. Because they didn't stop the movie from being made, but they weren't very happy with it,
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I haven't had time to research any of this stuff or look any of this up. But that lends a bigger charm to the movie, I think, just knowing that context. Because it doesn't feel like that, so you wouldn't necessarily get that impression to me, just because their movies are so precisely well made that it doesn't feel lesser than they don't have some support from somewhere, because it just seems so fully realized.
Yeah, and it's not often that you hear it's not often that you hear about the story. I don't know. It's just interesting that he would go against the government at that time. And it's, like I said, the government wasn't actively trying to stop him. It's just they were like, hey, don't do this,
No, well, this is...
And he's going to do it anyway.
Yeah, and this film was made in 1943, which is, really barely a year on from the end of World War II. If that.
So you can imagine how hot button of an issue all this whole thing was, and the tension around making it, and their need and their want to get this message on the screen for people to see.
Well, yeah, and it's actually, I would say it's World War II is just beginning, or is World War II ended in 1945. So they're in the middle of the war essentially, or right at the beginning of it. So there's a bunch of war effort going on too. So I think wasn't there a threat if they made this, they would never get the knighthood, so there was some cost to them to not make this film.
Yeah, and they never did.
Which I find interesting and honorable to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, that's the message of the movie. I'd rather, lose my way than win your way, basically. So they kind of, if they're going to make this movie, you can't not make this movie because people don't want you to make the movie, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you guys think of the name of this movie? Do you have, I kind of don't understand the name, to be honest. The Colonel Blimp, because that's why I keep wanting to call him Colonel Blimp, but it's not his name. That's not the character.
Well, I think that's part of what we were talking about earlier, is at the beginning of the movie, you're supposed to think of him as sort of this pompous cartoon of a man, right? And I think by calling him Colonel Blimp, that's like naming him like Mr. Blowhard or like
Colonel Fatso.
Yeah. Yeah, Colonel Red Nose, or you know what I mean, like whatever, you know. So it's like a way to be like the life and death of Colonel Blimp. It's like you're the young man in this story, right? You are coming in skeptical, and through his tale, you learn not the caricature that you thought he was, but you learn the man.
Okay.
He's not Colonel Blimp at all. It's not his name. You know, he's General Candy, and he's a complicated soul.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think I got confused because if you look on the IMDb character list, there is a character named Period Blimp, and I was like, that's kind of confusing. Is that the Colonel Blimp of the story, and why is it? But as a nickname, I think that makes way more sense, and I totally get it.
Yeah, at least that was my interpretation of it. I mean, there may be someone out there who knows exactly what it was.
Not I. But it works, I think, as a nickname.
Oh, here we go. So, if you look up Colonel Blimp, the Wikipedia says, Colonel Blimp is a British cartoon character by cartoonist David Lowe, first drawn for Lord Beaverbrook's London Everything Stranded in April 1934. Blimp is a pompous, irascible, jingoistic, and stereotypically British, identifiable by his walrus mustache and the interjection, "Gad, sir." Lowe claimed that he developed the character after overhearing two military men in a Turkish bath declare that cavalry officers should be entitled to wear the spurs inside the tanks. The character was named after the barrage balloon, which was known as a blimp.
Okay, so
that's exactly why.
Yeah, they're really referencing the character.
Yeah, so they took a well-known cartoon and then tried to intentionally make him look like that, and then for the purpose of then shedding light on his story to unfold the man underneath it all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. Now we have that answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Deborah Kerr. I find that very interesting that they, did like the 3-role thing, which immediately makes me think of Meg Ryan and Joe versus the Volcano.
Yeah. I was about to say Meg Ryan comes to mind right away.
Yeah.
And then Peter Sellers.
Yes, Peter Sellers. Alec Guinness in Kind Hearts and Cornets for the second time. We'll bring that movie up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love to see that. And do you think there's a thematic choice in doing that other than, I guess, just like for the story?
It is interesting. This is the part that I think I had the most, I don't want to say problems. It's not necessarily that I had a problem with it, but I thought it was weird that any girl in the movie with a significant speaking role is Deborah Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
She's one person's love interest, and then she's another person's love interest, and then she's like no one's love interest.
Or they keep her around because they remind her of their old.
Yeah, so it almost seems like belittling to the third girl that Deborah Kerr plays. It almost makes it feel like these men don't value any of the women that they're around. They just kind of.
I definitely got that a little bit more from the second one, even though at the time I didn't realize they're the same one. But it was like, she looks exactly like my old, this other girl that I really liked. And he didn't feel like he ever really got to know her, or she got her own character, It's just,
no.
She's just going to fill that spot, that void for me. So, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, Mike.
Exactly. I think if the movie has any problems, that's it. But that also could be a reflection on his character and a character flaw within him and within both of these men.
Yeah.
But it's not explored enough for me to know whether or not it's an intentional flaw or just a flaw in the writing. And I use the word flaw, but it's just my opinion, But
yeah.
Sure.
Which I think kind of brings us to the true love story of this film. And I think the part that, kind of touched me the most, and that's Theo and Candy's friendship throughout over time, So I was really moved. There's two moments that are really moving, I think, and that's the one where he finds Theo and he's a prisoner of war, and he so happy to find him, and he runs out there, and Theo just ignores him, and also the duel. I really like the way the duel stretches out the suspense, and then kind of never shows it to you. So both those moments were really great. What did you guys think about just that friendship in general?
Oh, I mean, it's like the crux of the movie, It's one of the things that was charming. Like I couldn't wait to see these guys get back together again in a scene and just talk to each other and be just, even though they're on opposite sides of a war, just be able to be so cordial with each other and honorable. I find that really fun. It's like the really charming part of the sword fight in the Princess Bride almost. And I think even the duel, I found there to be a bit of comedy of manners element to the duel, and just all of the weird rules and stuff. Just why you're mentioning the duel, I thought that was super funny, and just how long it took, and just this drawn out thing, and just they hadn't even met each other and they were going to duel. I just found that whole thing very funny.
Well, it's their meet cute.
That's so perfect. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is, right? They'll as soon as it gets time for the actual duel to happen, we pan out and we don't even focus on it. The duel doesn't matter. We have these build up to the duel, this almost Barry Lyndon level build up to a duel. And then the duel's not what's important. What was important was the build up and how they presented themselves and how they treated one another during the build up, and the honor and the courage they showed.
Yeah.
And the patriotism for their own sides, So it wasn't about the actual fight. It was about how these men conducted themselves and then forged a respect and friendship even after it, because it wasn't personal,
Right. And I think that's a reason behind not showing us the duel, and maybe going through all of this is putting the coldness on it to show that it's not a personal thing. These guys are both good people doing their country a service, essentially, by being in this duel. And I don't know what kind of feelings we might carry from the duel if we were to actually see them hurt each other, and how that might affect the way we see their friendship later in the film. So I think just as from a filmmaking, storytelling perspective, I feel it's the right move to establish keep their friendship where we need it to be as an audience, to not show us the duel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see the results of it, but if we saw them incur it on each other, we would hold a grudge against the Theo. And that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Good point.
Yeah, instead it cuts to a good old fashioned well, you got him, but he got you too. So it's kind of all right, that's the last we're going to hear about that, and we respect both of them.
Yeah.
And they respect one another, kind of thing.
I find the whole thing with Theo coming in and asking him, I'm in love with her or whatever, and he's just that's great news, I love it. They're so cordial with each other, and this ties in also with the war element of he'd rather lose and be honorable, him just immediately kind of being well, I'm happy for you, and giving up the love of his life just to be gentlemanly and proper.
I agree. And it's also interesting that him and Theo both have this point of view at the beginning, but it's only after the loss of World War I, when Theo goes back to his own country and he loses his children to the Nazi ideals that are taking hold in his country, and he sees what this gentlemanly way of doing war can get you, then that's when he comes back, and he basically has to beg his friend to see the difference, and he just won't. Which I thought, in my personal opinion, that was the best scene in the whole movie. Whenever he's trying to get into the country, Theo, and he's talking about losing his children, and how they don't even like him anymore. They don't even love him anymore. He lost them completely to Nazism.
Yeah, that long speech I think was probably the most captivated I felt versus entertained.
Mm-hmm. Very sad.
one of the things I find weird about this film, and even Grand Illusion and movies where they talk about honor, especially coming out of World War I, like how far removed were they from the actual fighting in World War I to not realize that, like war's pretty horrible and it's not gentlemanly at all. I don't know if that's a aspect of the movie, of the writing of it, or if it's people actually were sort of deluded in those ideals, because, like we've talked about, what was that documentary that Peter Jackson did last year? The way when we were young, or one of
They Shall Not Grow Old.
Yeah, They Shall Not Grow Old.
Nailed it, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. But I don't know how any of these like kind of aristocrats could come away and think, oh, war is gentlemanly. How do you guys feel about that? Because I feel like this is the upper echelon of society, like financially speaking, and they don't have to actually fight the wars. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. The way it's portrayed in the movie is it's portrayed in the way that like these men who have this idea of gentlemanliness and being perceived a certain way in wartime and fighting a certain way, the movie paints them out as never having been in this kind of danger before.
Yeah.
It's easy whenever you're top dog to not, get your hands dirty, so to speak, right? But I think that's why when Theo comes back, he's like, look, you guys don't get it. Like, you got to get dirty. You got to be ugly to win this thing, because they're going to be ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think the movie, the way I got it from the movie, and it's all I can go on, right, is right. What the movie tries to portray it as. I got the impression that Powell and Pressburger are kind of trying to tell everyone in charge in the current government, like, hey, you guys are out of touch. Like, it's worked out so far, but when you take a step back, you realize that what has been working for you so far hasn't been working at all, because now look where we are.
Yeah, you guys aren't in the trenches, fighting these wars type of thing, yeah.
Right, and you guys tried to handle that, your way the last time, and it's only been a generation, and we're already back here. Kind of, there's a sense of that,
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally am out of things to discuss specifically. Do you guys have anything else?
No, that does it for me on the life and death of Colonel Blimp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I could see this movie, it does feel a bit like Barry Lyndon in some ways, just in terms of it's a very similar movie and very similarly structured in some ways. And that movie I found a little trying the first time, and after thinking about it and sitting on it and talking about it and then watching it a second time, I found it way more entertaining and way more watchable. And even just like this conversation, I'm feeling more and more fond of the movie. And I think, despite what I said earlier, I think, the second one will probably be a lot more entertaining and a lot more fun to watch.
Yeah.
But, I think it's really good. I don't know that it's going to be my favorite Palme Pressburger.
If you had to, what is your favorite right now?
I think Black Narcissus.
Mine too. Yeah.
It's...
Black Narcissus is in like, on my Letterboxd page, it's in like one of the top 4 movies for me.
Oh, nice. Well, that's the one that you introduced me to, and that's where my first Palme Pressburger is. You had seen that one, and you were very high on it then, and you were like, you have to watch this film.
Still high on it now.
And Chris is just high on other things we can't talk about.
Night
crack.
Yes.
No. Oh, well, crack too. But
all right. Are we ready to go ahead and move into the next choosing? What do we call this section? What do we call this? The poll.
The amazing
part.
Criterion theme poll choosing.
All right. That's it.
We nailed it.
You heard it
Perfect.
here.
Yep. Coin that term.
All right. So for the amazing Criterion poll choosing this week.
Fun time, band.
Yeah. I get that. It's our theme this week is Palme d'Or winners, which is ripped from the film that we're going to cover next week, which will be Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which won the Palme d'Or.
Which is at the Cannes Film Festival, if you don't know what the Palme d'Or is.
Yeah, thank you. Clarity.
I imagine if you're listening to a Criterion Collection podcast, you probably know what the Palme d'Or is.
But just in case.
But anyway, so we are going to choose from films that are in the Criterion Collection that also won the Palme d'Or. So, Mike, do you want to be our first Criterion Amazing Fun Time Band poll chooser?
I do. Thank you. Yes. So the film that I wanted to choose is a film that I heard about a couple years back when a certain film was in theaters because it has a very similar scene or two. And this film inspired that film. And the film I am referring to is The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Ah, okay. Was sitting there trying to figure out where you were going.
Yeah, the inspiration for La La Land.
Yes.
A film which I really liked. I enjoyed La La Land, but I have not seen this film. And so Damien Chazelle recommends it, and that's all I need to know.
It's good.
Yeah, I actually put this on the other day. And this is kind of a little tangent story, but my fiance did not want to watch any Criterion films or anything artsy with me. So I was like, fine, I'm going to watch a film by myself. And I put on The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And like 2 minutes in, she was like, wait, I kind of want to watch this. But I don't want to watch a movie now, so don't watch this and watch
so
something
stop
else.
what you're doing.
Yeah. So this is a good choice if it wins.
That's like the equivalent of like a dog claiming a tree by peeing on it.
Essentially,
it's
yes.
like, don't watch this yet. That's funny.
Yeah.
What'd you watch instead?
Oh, what did I watch instead? I think I watched like an hour of Kagemusha.
Nice.
Actually, I'll go a little further, but so that didn't work out with Umbrellas of Cherbourg. So then I put on Pierre Lafaux, which is another film she refuses to watch with me. And 2 minutes into that one, she was like, well, this might be kind of fun. I might kind of like this. Well, don't watch that one. So then I was like, I'll put on a 3-hour samurai movie, which I don't think you'll ever be interested in.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't watch the whole thing actually because I got sleepy.
Way to show her.
Yes. But anyways, Chris, what is your amazing Criterion fun time choice?
Interesting that you said 3-hour movie because I picked a short film called The Leopard. That was it's only short. 3 hours and 6 minutes. Yeah,
good. Another long epic.
Yeah,
thanks, Chris.
I don't think it's gonna win, to be honest, because I think Umbrellas of Cherbourg for sure is really popular, and then we'll see what Justin
and
picks.
A breezy 135 minutes as well, I might add.
Yeah. But this is one that I've been meaning to get around to. I think I even own the DVD at some point, and I just never have. So I felt like this was a good opportunity to put it on the list and check it out.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, good job. I've never seen this either, so if this wins, that's even better. Also, I think I said it 135 minutes earlier. It's an hour and 35 minutes.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely not 135 minutes.
Yeah, there's a difference. I messed up.
It's okay. I do it all the time. Mess up, that is.
Yeah.
Just in general.
I know.
Well, Justin, don't mess up with this. Pick your movie.
Yeah, don't mess up.
Fine. Okay. I'm going to go with a film that I have been wanting to watch forever, and it's just been this film that I think since I first got into film, this one came up all the time, and I was like, I'm going to watch this. Even going back to like Criterion Hulu days and like building your Netflix DVD queue before they did streaming. This was always in there, and I just never got to it. But that is Paris, Texas from Wim Wenders.
Nice.
Or Wim Wenders. I don't know how you say it. Isn't he German?
Yeah.
Wim Wenders.
Yeah.
Is probably the more appropriate pronunciation.
Funny story. I recently drove through Paris, Texas, so there's that. So I feel like I've basically seen the movie.
Yeah. Why don't you just talk about that if this wins?
Yeah.
And don't
it
watch
didn't
the
take
movie.
very long to drive through it.
Yeah, well, Mike and I will watch the movie. You just talk about driving through Paris, Texas, and then we'll just kind of see how
we'll compare.
Yeah.
Yeah. See what the similarities. Okay. Perfect.
All right. So the recap the three choices. Mike has The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Chris chose The Leopard, and I chose Paris, Texas. So those are your three choices. If you're listening to this, that poll is up right now on our Twitter at Casual Cinecast.
Is there a 90-minute version of The Leopard?
who knows? There's multiple versions, so
Yeah.
we'll decide amongst ourselves if that wins which version we're going to watch.
Yeah. Awesome. Loophole.
We'll just watch Bringing Up Baby instead.
Yeah.
It's got a leopard in it.
It has
so.
a leopard.
Yeah.
2,
Sorry,
really.
I was confused. Okay, are we done?
Yeah, we are done. Thank you guys so much for listening. Really appreciate it. And then, of course, thank you as always, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this channel. Next week, we will be putting out an episode on the Palme d'Or winner for Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. This is a movie I am very excited about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So far, I think I'm the only one that hasn't seen it yet, so we got that. I'm very excited to see it.
I'm excited for you to see it, and I'm super excited to talk about it. I actually just saw it right before.
I know. I hope you don't find out about the nuclear bomb going off.
Oh, no, it's ruined.
Got him with his own joke.
Yeah. You're right, Chris. That is comic gold and worth saying every time.
I'm glad you finally discovered that, Mike.
Yeah.
The joy of it.
Well, if you've seen Parasite and you have questions, which I'm sure if you've seen it, you probably have things that you'd like to hear people talk about, you can send us your questions and topics to discuss on Parasite to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also email those to casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
We really appreciate you guys listening, and we can't wait to see you next time.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, Chris Gallagher from the War Starts at Midnight podcast, for the awesome recommendation for The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. You're great. Goodbye, everybody.
War starts at midnight.
Yeah, bye.